Waiting for the YouTube to kick off. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is JJ Arisha. I'm with Pismo Ventures. We're the host of the Global Startup Symposium. Thank you for being part of this. We've had a great week last week with early access, allowing investors and startups to connect and book appointments and engage. We've heard from a lot of startups that they've gotten connected with between 30 and 40 investors, which is absolutely fantastic to have a platform like this to allow uh, founders to connect with so many investors in one place. Um, Today is Life Science Day, so the webinars and the panels are mostly about life science, and the presentations starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time are also life science today. Tomorrow is AI, a day after is deep tech, and on Thursday it's all other startups, or all other tech startups, I should say. Um, in the morning, we have webinars and panels every day. Please visit the agenda. And in the afternoons are the presentations. I want to thanks very much Quan and his patent law firm, or IP law firm, intellectual property law firm, for being a main sponsor for this event. Please reach out to Quan and reach out to NTIP, which is Nguyen and Tarbet intellectual property law firm. They have an office in Irvine, California, and in Tucson, Arizona as well. Thank you again for being part of this. Make sure you use all the tools that we have available for you. Text chat, video chat, there's support tools that are available. Book appointments with investors. Investors, please do the same thing. If you find companies that you really like, please go ahead and reach out to them. Brian, I'll leave it up to you. Thank you very much for moderating this panel, and you can take it from here.
Thanks, JJ. Thank you for hosting. It's been a great pleasure to participate in the Pismo Ventures Symposia over the years, getting connected with a lot of startups and having our startups get a chance to pitch to investors. Really nice opportunity. I'm excited to share today with all our attendees about the topic of resources for startups at university campuses. And I'll do a brief introduction, but then we'll hear from each of our panelists to hear what specific resources they have. And so I'll just highlight who those panelists are, and then we'll get to them individually shortly. So we have Patricia Stepp from Rice University, Doug Hochstadt from University of Arizona, Gary Bobby from Baylor College of Medicine, Alvin Verre from University of California, Irvine, and Charlie Lewis from SkySong at Arizona State University. I myself direct the Tech Transfer Office at George Washington University, which goes by the name Technology Commercialization Office. So I think the main key takeaway, I think, for our session should be that universities are an exciting hub for startup activity. And this wheel of innovation really highlights that fact, which comes from our Technology Transfer Professional Society, which is called AUTM. You can check that out for a lot more information about our activities. But just take a look at some of the highlights here. So these are the activities in our offices at different universities together with data combined for fiscal year 2023. Almost 1,000 startups formed. And so with that formation of companies, we have a lot of programming, a lot of resources that we put into this process at every stage that those companies benefit from. And some of that can be obtained and interacted with even through startups that don't have licensing relationship through our offices. There are other opportunities, particularly looking at those research expenditures, where we're doing just billions upon billions of dollars of research at our universities and research institutions. And a good portion of that is through sponsored research from companies and industry, and through collaborative research. So those are nice opportunities. On top of all these activities highlighted here, our universities are a great source for talent, for people that can help join your company, whether that be students or graduates, or advising even from some of our faculty. And so there's a lot to be had here. It's not just technology or money, but it's really a full suite of what a startup needs to grow. So a little bit about our office, and please, most importantly, connect with us on LinkedIn. We have QR codes here to make it easy. We post every week on LinkedIn, so a lot of good content there. And then check out our website where you can find out how we operate. You can look, learn about our funding opportunities and what technologies we have available for licensing. So this team is, very experienced and open to talk to you and help guide you through how you can use the resources we have. And they're very focused on connecting the technology, people, and money it takes to get startups growing. Here are a few examples of the breadth and array of technologies that we have licensed and different startups are working to commercialize. So a good bit of it is medical and life science related, but a lot of it is in other areas such as computing or sustainability. And so it's really all over the place. Whatever your field of interest is, there may be something for you at the university. I want to highlight one particular story which illustrates use of some of the resources we have available at GW. So the company formed what is called Opal HTM, and they started with an initial idea. They came to our office. We worked with them to file a patent. They then did lean innovation training through NSF's I-Corps program, which helped them with their customer discovery, going out and talking to customers and validating the need and working on their product market fit. And we then did a licensing deal with the company. Eventually got some patents awarded along lines of covering the invention, giving them some barrier to entry for competition. Then they went and leveraged all that experience to go and get a big research grant from the NSF, as well as a STTR, which is a collaboration between the startup and GW. And along with that STTR, office put in $100,000 to match to really leverage the amount of development they can get on with that early stage grant. So that gives you an idea of the impact and different resources we have along the trajectory from the conception of a startup through to getting into the development phase. Another type of support that we have even before licensing takes place is our Technology Maturation Awards. So many people don't realize that the old model of technology transfer where we get some government grant, maybe have an idea, go file a patent, and then hope something will happen. This is really not how it works anymore. So we have internal funding to help do some of the product development type activities to make these technologies further along the development scale and more likely to succeed in the hands of a startup. So again, a breadth of technologies that receive benefit of up to $50,000 from us to help move things along more in a commercial direction. And then after we have a deal with a startup, we give them continued support, not just through our matching fund for those SBIRs or STTRs, but also opportunities to get in front of investors and to meet the funders of small business grants from federal agencies, as well as getting advice from experienced lawyers in how to put together, found a startup and organize it properly. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to, let's see who I have first here on the schedule. So first up, we have Patricia Stepp, AVP of Tech Transfer from Rice University.
Thanks, Brian. And let me see if I can share my screen and everything will go okay. Okay, everybody can see that. Does it look okay, Brian?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to highlight a little bit. I'm at Rice University. I direct the Office of Tech Transfer here. Just a kind of a quick summary overall, pretty similar to most tech transfer offices. We do have the contracts team within our Office of Tech Transfer And just to kind of highlight, we start off with that invention, and the idea is, the whole office is for innovation generation. So once we get that invention, we try to market it or to license it to our startups and then work towards commercialization. And the contracts team is really there also to help facilitate any of those discussions that would lead to any of those relationships. So we do non-disclosure agreements, material transfer agreements, and hopefully if it comes to corporate sponsored research agreements, anything to help with that funding or transferring material collaborations. And then just to I like to talk a little bit about what we try to do when we're working with our startups. And that's really important. And so kind of at the very beginning, what we want to do is have them reach out to us and confirm the IP is available. So we're a pretty big innovative university, and sometimes maybe the faculty and the students are interested. So we always just ask them to kind of reach out and let us know early on what they're thinking, if they're on the same page. Also to make sure that they disclose their startup activity to the Office of Research Integrity to make sure for any conflict of interest matters. We work pretty closely with them as well. And if there's any outside representation needed during that process. What we like to tell in the beginning too is if you're going to have any outside conversations, maybe look at a confidentiality agreement. And then really the first step for our startups is we try to get them to formalize into a good, succinct business plan. I think sometimes you're very interested and you want to do the startup, but really before you just jump full into that, maybe think about what's your business plan, right? What's your team? Do you need facilities? What's your investment plan? And what's your path to market? Because really what you're trying to look at is, who are your customers and what's your product? And that's really important. And then I really liked how Brian highlighted one of the stories. We talk a lot about options or licenses. I think a lot of our students, sometimes our faculty get excited to license, but really what's important is that option, because that's going to hold your IP for those license negotiations. And it's also good enough to go ahead and proceed and get your first early stage funding. And so I know on Brian's example, it showed that option and then years later for the license, because we like to say the license is a much more robust agreement where we really encourage you to hire legal counsel. And those are grants of right to practice IP, but with that also comes financial obligations of maybe reimbursing patent costs. And so really starting with that option is very helpful. And then my licensing team likes to put little do's and don'ts of when you're trying to start this path. So one we always say is to try to find good mentors. I'll kind of show later, we have a couple opportunities where you can do that through different entrepreneurship activities within Rice and then within Houston as well. And then also to kind of understand what your expectations are and to really kind of manage that. We always think about the founder is usually the person who also created that invention. So there's a lot of strong ties with that, but just to really understand what you're going to be doing when you're doing that startup. We always say that first CEO is really focused on fundraising, and that's a really important initial piece. And sometimes researchers, maybe that's not the best fit. So really understanding what that founder wants to see happen at the beginning of the company. Also to make sure you designate one company representative. That's a little bit easier to talk with outside investors and just make that whole streamlined process a little bit better for everybody. Also to make sure you evaluate the IP and develop your IP strategy. I think sometimes companies want to ask the university or the tech transfer office, but really you need to kind of have that idea. And then we try to work with you to help facilitate that and make sure that happens. But the idea is not for us to provide that strategy because we're not the ones who are making that business plan. And it's important to make sure that you're aligned on your IP strategy with your business plan. Also, if you need to procure any facilities or resources, wet lab space or office space, that's important to understand. And then make sure you know your commercialization path. So just to kind of highlight a couple resources that we have within Rice, we do have a great, for our graduate students and our postdocs, it's called Lily. It's our little idea lab for innovation and entrepreneurship. They offer course offerings, a great co-working space. There's an innovation fellow program where you commit towards the end of graduate school or postdoc about 1 or half a day a week with this other innovation fellows where you're trying to help form that startup. So really kind of early stage and just understanding the process. And then they have a great commercialization academy with a lot of additional education for those innovation fellows. We also have a newly formed Office of Innovation as of 2022. And really that's to kind of help with that gap funding or additional resources, facilities. So the first thing that we were able to do is we have a One Small Step grant, which we have 2 cycles in the spring and the fall. And those are for Rice startups for that gap funding. So anywhere from about $50,000 to $100,000. And usually I think the goal is about 3 to 5 a year. They also have Nexus, which is a new collaboration space at one of our buildings called the Ion. It's about 5-7 minutes off campus. And so there's other investment people there, startups, but also Rice startups in that Nexus space. And that's really to advertise our Rice startups, but to also kind of offer you that co-working space kind of in the early days of your startup. And then we also have the Biotech Launchpad. That's kind of our in-house accelerator specifically for biotech technologies. So that was just launched last fall. And really that's just to kind of help with those startup companies in the biotech space and really accelerate that on to help get that next stage of funding that they may need. We also have the Rice Alliance, which is our kind of business plan competition. That's actually international. So that's open to everybody. That's once a year. It's pretty widely recognized and we get it from all over the world. So that's something really exciting too. Usually they're a little bit more advanced startups, but I've reviewed the green tech space and it's a pretty broad space. So we've seen everywhere from like California to Paris. So that's a great opportunity for everyone as well. And then kind of within Houston, although I'm pretty new to the area, I've been collecting it. So we have the Texas Medical Center Innovation kind of suite. It's in an old Nabisco factory. So they have Johnson & Johnson labs there, several startups. And then we also have Helix Park, which I think we have 2 buildings that have been built. So we have some space over there for our Biotech Launchpad. A lot of others, it's not just for Rice, it's for Houston in general. And then the Ion District I mentioned, we have that building, and right close to it is also Greentown Labs for clean energy, Hexi, which is also more towards the clean energy space as well. And then Portal Innovations has an office here. Activate is also here, which offers 2-year fellowships. It's clean energy and climate tech. Nucleate, which is a bio-entrepreneur community led by grad students that came out of Harvard. So we have a chapter here in Houston as well. And then we also have something, what I find to be pretty unique. It's called the Gulf Coast Consortia. So this is a collaboration of all of the universities nearby. So I know Gorey's Baylor College of Medicine participates, MD Anderson, UT Health, Rice, University of Houston. And they also have an NSF Reach grant, and that's kind of free before you form that startup. That's to help you get those mentors I kind of mentioned. So that's really helpful. They align you with great mentors and other people to help you facilitate forming that startup that you really want to. So that's through the NSF, and that's a great program that I believe was just started off though last year. And then just to kind of highlight a couple quick companies from Rice. So we had one called Volumetric. It was from a bioengineering professor, Jordan Miller, and Bhagat Gregorian, and they founded that in 2018. They licensed the IP from Rice in 2019, and in 2021, it was acquired by 3D Systems for $400 million. So those are 3D engineered vasculature, artificial vasculature for blood supply. And then another one that's pretty new, we're pretty big on the material science here. We have Syzygy Plasmonics. So that was formed in 2018. Those were from former students in Professor Naomi Hallis's lab, who actually reviewed her portfolio and then reached out to try to license that. They have, as of 2022, they've raised over 100 million. And just this year, they've opened orders for their first commercial scale Rigel photoreactors for customers. So those are kind of ours. So you can kind of see we run the gamut from biotech to physics. We do material science, a lot of graphene and graphite applications for new materials as well. And that's it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer or wait till the end.
Yeah, attendees, please chime in with questions. We'll try to hit them as we go. But let's move on to our next presenter for now, which is Doug Hochstead from Tech Launch Arizona.
That's good. Good job. You got me. You got it close enough, right? All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all, or see that you all are here. I figured I would just kind of quickly or briefly talk about what TLA is about, and then kind of dive in, very similar to a lot of things that Patricia said. I'm going to try and do a little bit on what we do for the university and a little bit on what happens in the ecosystem. But our purpose as an office, it's called Tech Launch Arizona. We are the commercialization unit for the University of Arizona. And it's really about building the ecosystem as well as getting things out of the university to have an impact. Kind of feel like we're not going to be able to get things out of the university without having a really robust ecosystem, and that would involve all of you. Personally, I have spent 12 years, started with 12 years in the computer industry, doing every role in both existing and startups. And then the last 23 plus years, I've been in the university, started at the University of Michigan, then came to Arizona to run this office. At Arizona, there's something called the IP official, as well as at Arizona State. And it is the person that is designated by our regents for that university to be responsible for all intellectual property. And really, like I said, our role is to strengthen the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem. Our office is split up into 5 primary groups. I'm going to focus on 2 of them, the venture and student venture development and student ventures. But we also have the traditional side of all the licensing and the IP management, and we're cradle to grave group where our licensing managers work from before disclosure all the way through to licensing to the existing company or the startup. And then we also have a cross-cutting groups of our marketing group and our finance group. If any of you are involved with Autumn, you'll probably know Paul. He runs all the money of the marketing courses for Autumn. But I'm going to focus on these 2 because these 2 really, I think, hit home for everything that we're talking about here today. When we're talking about the startup creation, we're typically focused on university-owned IP. With the student ventures, this is a brand new effort. I think it's relatively unique among tech transfer offices, where we're going to be supporting students with their own intellectual property, primarily because we already have all the mechanisms set up for helping faculty start companies, and we can leverage that to help the students as well. But we handle kind of everything across the gamut, from the early on market opportunity of a startup, the customer discovery, which is I-Core, and we are part of what's called the Desert and Pacific Hub, I-Core Hub, with ASU as well. And we use that, we leverage that a lot to help our startups. Now, I'll get into in a minute, but that extends beyond our startups as well. But we also, so moving on, I'm just going to kind of move through this relatively quickly. We work at the technology side too. As many of you know, technologies coming out of a university are at a very low TRL. They're really early nascent inventions. So one of the things that we work on is what can we do to de-risk those? And we've created something, again, I think similar to what I heard Brian talking about. I remember Patricia did as well. We have a fund. It's about $1 million to $1.5 million a year that we can invest in technologies prior to license. So we can actually get things out at a higher TRL. Then we have a group of people that focus specifically on the company. So this is not the licensing manager. This is a combination of a venture development manager who focuses strictly on startups and a group of mentors and residents. These are half-time employees, all people that have been there, done that. And they focus on a select number of startup projects, helping them through the company formation side, the roles, the agreements that are going to be required, all of that. And as many of us on the panel know, probably aside from funding, one of the big challenges we all have is finding leadership for startups. Just like Patricia said, early on, we know if a faculty member is interested in a startup, and it's one of the things that pushes them into our startup venture pipeline. But even if they are interested, they're probably not the right people to run the company. There are a few people that are, but most of the time, these are really deep technical experts in their science, and we need business leadership. So we do a lot of things to try and nurture that business leadership. We have a commercialization network, about 500 people across the country that we leverage to help us with everything from just answering questions, giving us leads, making connections, but also seeing some of them may illustrate an interest in starting a company or working on a technology. The other thing that we've done, we've created 2 programs to try and draw in leadership. One is, both are new. One is the Startup Hub portal. We've created a portal of a very curated list, about 20 technologies that we believe would make really good platforms for a startup. And with those platforms, with those selected few, we've put a lot of material around, including things like an interview with the inventor, the commercialization analysis, things like that. And commitment from the inventor that A, they are not interested in running the company, and B, they will support someone running the company. So that's potentially of interest to the ecosystem, both local and national. And then we created what we used to call an EIR program. We're working on that name as well, but where we would actually contract with somebody for a short stint for 4 to 6 months, where they would be a contractor for the university and they would work on one of our technologies, moving it forward along the startup path, hopefully at the end, deciding they will actually be the business leadership and roll it out of the university. And then the last thing we focus on is funding. That, there's a whole bunch of things that a startup has to look at, but we leverage that network to help the startup team understand what their needs are, go through due diligence or understand the concepts of due diligence and prep for it. We actually created an SBIR CTR support program where we will engage, prior to the launch starting, we'll engage a consultant to come and help with an SBIR CTR application. And then we actually work them through pitch prep before and after launch. So even after a launch, we will network to create opportunities for our startups. And then when they're going to do a pitch, we will invite them back to pitch to our commercialization network. So this group of people that really want to help and get feedback on their pitch and hone it and improve it. Now, when you take all of that and leverage it outside, there's a lot of things that both we can do as well as the greater ecosystem. This isn't everything, but I figured I'd point out a few things. So within TechLaunch, like I said, we're part of I-Corps. We have an I-Corps hub. We will do several cohorts a year that are focused on community startups. So not just University of Arizona ones. Some of those are students and so that is related to U of A, but it's not U of A IP necessarily. And some are startups in the community. We've created a new program called a VMS, a Venture Mentoring Service, where we have volunteers from the community that have agreed to mentor startups that are in some way affiliated with the university. And the affiliation is loose. Obviously, it could be one of our startups, but it could be a student startup. It could be an alumni startup, and maybe some even looser relationships. A good example is that next big bullet point, the University of Arizona Center for Innovation. That is an affiliated but separate incubator that's affiliated through our tech parks. It's the state's largest and longest running incubator. And any company from around the country that's a part of that, usually of course about 50 to 60 companies running at any one time, can get into the VMS if they want to. I mentioned the Startup Hub a minute ago. We will actually curate networking events and pitch events and support companies that want to get into pitch events. And the newest endeavor is we actually created a venture fund. It's a philanthropic-based fund, so it's donor-based, but we will invest in university-affiliated startups. So that's really anything that's got a loose relationship with the university. One of our startups, a student startup, an alumni startup, a faculty startup, anything like that. This is really early pre-seed funding. It's the $25K to $250K range, meant to be the first money in and not meant as a follow-up investment. It's just a one-time investment to get companies over the valley of death to get more funding. Outside of the university ecosystem, there's a lot of things happening in this state. The Arizona Commerce Authority, the ACA, has one of the country's largest innovation challenges. They give away at least $1 million a year, hundreds of thousands of dollars in awards to companies. And those winners also get into their venture scale program, which is a 6-month accelerator. They've also spun out a separate fund based on some federal funding. That's a statewide venture fund focused specifically on Arizona companies. So any company in this state can apply for it, either as a fund of funds or as direct funding. We have a couple of philanthropic groups. One is the Flynn Foundation. They also support both research in grants. They'll have annually an event where they invite research institutions to submit ideas, and they fund those ideas on an 18-month basis, as well as awards directly to entrepreneurial startups in the life science space. Phoenix Bioscience Corps is a very large state and city supported thing in Phoenix. All 3 universities are there. And under that, there's a new program called Accelerate, which is to help scale-ready startups actually accelerate faster. And it's primarily, again, focused on life science. And there are other things around. We have investors in this state. We have a really strong angel network. It's one of the top, most active angel groups in the country. And then there's things like Startup Tucson, focused on primarily the smaller lifestyle startups, but anyone that comes to this region could engage with them, AZ Bio and others. Finally, I thought I would just end on kind of the impact that this has had. We did an economic impact study a couple of years ago, and over a 5-year period ending in 21, found that the work that we were doing on startups primarily had generated about $1.6 billion in impact on the state. So you can see we're doing a lot. It's supported 2,500 jobs, and they expect that all to increase to about a $4.7 billion impact over the next 10 years, ending in 31. And we've had several successful things. I didn't actually point out any here, but the easiest one off the top of my head is we had a startup in the pharmaceutical software space that actually was preventing bad medication interactions between any individual that was getting multiple prescriptions across different doctors, getting filled at different pharmacies. And they stopped millions of bad interactions, and that company was eventually acquired in the well over $100 million range. Anyway, I think that's it for me, and I will pass it on to the next person.
Thanks, Doug. And folks, don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A tool. We'll be happy to address those. And next, we're going to move on to Gary from Baylor.
Yeah, hi. I hope you can see my screen. So I'm Gauri, and I am a technology manager at Baylor College of Medicine. I just wanted to go really quickly through the resources we have available at BCM for startups that are either formed at BCM or startups that license from us. So just a quick overview of how we're changing things. I think traditionally a lot of tech transfer offices, including Baylor, has been focused on just licensing technologies to already established companies, and we don't want anything more to do with them anymore once the licensing is done. So a lot of institutions around the US and also specifically in Houston have been changing their strategy a lot over the last maybe 5 years, and getting a lot more involved in post-licensing activities where they support the companies that are actually licensing from us. Because with our goal of making sure that the commercialization is successful, we believe that it's very important to provide support even after the licensing has been done. So Baylor College of Medicine, being a medical institute, we know that our strengths lie in clinical technologies and clinical trials, helping with regulatory affairs, things like that. So we try to leverage those technologies, and we try to provide support even after licensing. So in the last few years, we've actually been not only supporting our own startups, but other companies that license with us with separate agreements after licensing, which involve co-development. We have become involved in joint ventures with several companies. We've formed strategic alliances process with bigger institutions and entities which could help. We've even done some in-licensing to support our own patents or patent applications so that we have a larger portfolio to provide to a commercial entity that's licensing from us. So we've been looking a lot at what resources we can bring to the table to help with the commercialization of technologies coming from Baylor. So Houston is not a place you think of when you think about startup activity traditionally, but this has been changing a lot. And we are calling ourselves the third coast. So that's something to think about. So a lot of the institutions around the area are actually taking a lot of steps and collaborating with each other to come up with an ecosystem that's sustainable, where we don't lose our startups going to other areas after they've become a certain size. So we're helping a lot on, or we're thinking a lot about those issues as well in terms of making it attractive to startups to actually come here to us. So that's another reason why we provide a lot of other support in terms of we not only have a large portfolio of licensable technologies, but we are a private institution. So we have a lot of flexibility in the way we license things. So we can provide different types of agreements, which are not purely just licensing, but Baylor can help with putting a management team in place. We have mentorship activities. We have a lot of joint ventures with even with venture capital firms, where we have agreements where we can put our startups and startups that license with us in contact with venture capitalist firms or other sources of other financial resources and things like that. We also provide a lot of infrastructure support. So we provide some type of gap funding. There's multiple gap funding resources within Baylor to help technologies get to the commercial level. But we also provide, we partner with the Texas Medical Center, which has its own innovation hub. So we partner with them to provide wet lab space, co-working spaces, office spaces, and also prototyping capabilities for more of the device type of we're mostly medical, so medical device type of innovations. And even if it's a third party licensing our technologies, we can help with some of the initial funding support, and just depending on what is needed for a particular technology. So we have a thriving ecosystem within Houston, even if it's not that well known. And we are inviting more people to come in. We have a new building that Patricia mentioned coming up. It's called Helix Park. It's an entire setup that's been developed by, again, the Texas Medical Center institutions to come together and invite venture capital firms to be there, as well as bigger companies to be there. So there's more organic interaction between the startups and bigger companies who might be able to acquire them later. So the technologies and licensing, we have a large portfolio of technologies available for licensing. We are a medical institution, so most of our technologies are within the medical space. Our strength is in therapeutics and vaccines. One example is Baylor has licensed the COVID vaccine that's the more traditional, not the mRNA type of vaccine that's been developed by Dr. Peter Hotez. So that was licensed during the pandemic to other countries outside of the US. So that's really our core strength. We have a large portfolio of diagnostics and research tools. This is actually the part of our portfolio that gets licensed the most. And then we have a growing portfolio of medical devices and now software technologies, mostly related to healthcare. So Baylor participates in multiple pathways of technology licensing. Like I mentioned, we of course do traditional licenses where we license out our technologies and we're not involved anymore. But we support our own startups in a number of ways where, and by our own startups, I mean where the inventor is involved in the founding of the startup. In those cases, we help with just the founding, putting a management team in place, IP strategy, clinical trials, right up to the end of regulatory as much as is needed. And it's based on a case-by-case basis. So we really try to use our strengths, which is the clinical infrastructure and the research know-how in this case. Then spin-offs from BCM, Baylor can be involved in a management level or depending on how much involvement the startup requires and wants. We are willing in most cases to support that. This is just a support structure provided to reduce like the failure rate or risk of failure for startups. And then existing startups licensing from Baylor, we are also flexible in the licensing terms. A lot of the times we know that startups are cash strapped at the beginning, so we're flexible on those. And we also have in terms of if the inventors are interested, our inventors have the flexibility to participate in an existing startup in the form of a consultant or to help develop the product further. And then more about the overall ecosystem. This is a picture of the Helix Park, which is coming up soon, or some of it has already been constructed. But this is kind of the Houston, Texas Medical Center ecosystem that's been going on for years, but it's really booming now. So we have a lot of medical institutions here who collaborate really closely. So we have technologies coming out from different collaborations, and we have internal resources. We have Shark Tank competitions within Baylor every year where a lot of awards are given out. We have equity investments. We give out lab space. We help with all the downstream clinical trials, things like that, which we actually participate in with the companies. And then, of course, there's the Texas Medical Center resources, which is the TMCI. They have multiple competitions. They have an incubator space. They have separate pathways for different types of innovations. They have a separate ACT program, which is specific to cancer therapeutics. And then they have another program for digital health and medical devices. So we participate heavily in those programs. There's overall Houston resources, which is multiple angel investor networks and active investors. And then there's, of course, Texas resources, which is CPRIT is a big one. So a lot of companies come to Texas for the CPRIT grants. And then there's just a lot of investment capabilities in the different areas of Texas. So that's an overview of our Baylor College of Medicine's involvement.
Thanks, Gauri. And our next presenter is Alvin from the University of California, Irvine.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the time. And let me share my screen. Okay. Here at UCI, my name is Alvin Bray. I'm the Associate Director at our Tech Transfer Group. We're under a big organization called Beal Applied Innovation. And what I thought I'd do today is, well, first, as you know, just like my other colleagues on this panel, we're trying to do is improve lives through access from our university ideas and inventions. Part of the way we do that is we encourage entrepreneurship and provide services and resources for our startups. UC Irvine is part of is one campus in the city of Irvine, but we're actually, we have many campuses, but we're one university. And you could go to this website and you could search for all technologies across all of the campuses, including Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Francisco, UCSD. And that will give you an idea of what technologies are available for licensing And then you'll get in touch with each individual campus to talk specifically about that one. What I thought I'd do is kind of show you some pictures about our physical space. What kind of makes us unique is that Tech Transfer, we actually have a building. That building is called The Cove at Beal Applied Innovation, and it is a 3-story building. It is located in our research park. We are not on campus, and so if you take nothing away from this presentation, know that our building has plenty of parking and it's free, which is a big deal, I think, in university campuses. Next to us is Medtronic, their intravascular unit, and also next to us is Skyworks. So that gives you an idea of kind of where we are. Okay, so our building, or the Cove, is sort of open to the public in that you can rent an office. Anyone can rent an office in our space. We have many offices in the 2nd and the 3rd floor. You can, once you're in and renting an office, you have access to all the facilities, which I'll talk about in a moment, including all of our conference rooms. Conference rooms fit anywhere between 6 people and 30 people. You could even rent a little, we call them corrals, it's more like a cubicle, on a monthly basis. Once you do that, you can use our building's address for your startup. So some of our tenants in our building includes the Small Business Development Center, the SBDC. I think some of you are familiar with that organization. They're in each county in California. So there's one in San Diego County, Orange County, LA County. The office in Orange County is in our building. And where they shine really is in helping startups find SBIR, STTR consulting. I'm sorry, SBIR, STTR funding. So they will consult with you to try to find a call for proposals, which your startup can apply for. And they're free. And because they don't just offer their services to UCI startups, they offer their services to startups in Orange County. We have lots of entrepreneurs, lots of different startups from the community coming into our building and meeting with them. In our building also, we have investors. We have about 5 investors here. I think we have a total of about 6 or 7 who have offices in our building. I see them all the time in our kitchen and in our co-sharing space at the water cooler. The Techos Angels are here. That's one of the biggest angel network in the country. The Cove Fund, which some of you are familiar with, they have an office here. The Cove Fund, actually, I think every month they do their pitch events downstairs in one of our events spaces. So once a month, they have 3 or 4 startups present to them and for investment. Okay. Downstairs in our space, we have a prototyping lab as well. It has all of the equipment that you might need to develop your prototype, etc. Right now, there's about 4 startups in there. You do not have to be a UCI startup to be in there. I think one of them is a startup from the community. They are renting benches. So there are there's about 6 or 8 benches down there, which you can rent. Upstairs in our 3rd floor is a wet lab incubator. It is a nonprofit wet lab incubator. We call it the University Lab Partners. It is a state-of-the-art wet lab, everything for your therapeutics, your biologics, your medical devices. They have benches also for rent. They have fume hoods, freezer farms, etc. Right now, there are probably about 25 startups in our 3rd floor running around. Only about 5 of them are UCI startups. So about 20 startups, I don't even know who they are. but they're running around doing their thing up there. Downstairs, I talked to you a little bit about what kind of events that we have. So downstairs we have event spaces. What you're looking at right now is an event space called The Beach. So we like to tell people they're at the beach in the Cove. And this space is available for rent for the community. So not only do we have people like Vizio, who has their headquarters here in Orange County, Kaiser Permanente, who's a big HMO, they have events here. But we also have people like SoCal Bio. SoCal Bio is an organization that provides services to entrepreneurs and startups in not only the Orange County area, but also the LA area. And they will come and they'll do events at our space. Octane is another sort of organization in Orange County called the Orange County Technology Action Network. They have an incubator also for startups called Octane Launchpad, and they will rent our space to do some of their events as well. So we have in our space, we've done lunch and learns. We've had Google Ventures come and give a talk about kind of what they're looking for. Because these are open to the public, anyone can come into our building to check those out. We did networking event Monday Night Football. We used to do that was sponsored by a law firm or a VC firm, and people would come to our space and not only watch the game, but also enjoy some food and some drinks and to just network with each other. So this is another shot of our co-working space. This is up in the second floor. We have a patio. We have 4 kitchens. And the purpose really of the Cove and Beal Applied Innovation is to have these fortuitous collisions where you are running around in the space and you meet other startups, other entrepreneurs, and investors and other people who are in the Orange County startup ecosystem. Not just at UCI, right? Because these spaces are open to rent to the Orange County community. We do I-Corps. I think one of my colleagues, a couple of my colleagues already mentioned I-Corps. We do I-Corps also in our space. As you know, I-Corps does customer discovery. We have ways that you can get involved with Beal Applied Innovation. We have what's called Innovation Advisors. They are, some of you call them entrepreneurs in residence. These are volunteers who mentor some of our startups. And if you have a particular area of expertise and are looking to get involved, you could become an innovation advisor. We also have proof of product grants. We're always looking for talented people to serve as reviewers for these. We do these every 6 months. These are grants, micro grants to faculty to pursue their technology. It's not a proof of concept grant, it's a proof of product grant. So they have to show, their proposal has to show what's next in their commercialization step. And those are up, those grants are up to $100,000. And we're always looking for outside people to serve as a reviewer. Oftentimes that reviewer sometimes gets involved because that reviewer wants to do a startup and they'll hook up with the faculty to do exactly just that. Okay, that's UCI. I took a little different approach. I kind of showed off our physical space and where our office is. If that appeals to you, we'd be happy to have your startup join us here in Southern California. Thank you.
Thanks, Alvin. Great resources, beautiful space. So next we'd like to hear from Charlie Lewis at Arizona State University.
All right. Is my screen on right now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. I think we're only scheduled till noon here, right? So I'll move through these kind of fast.
Oh, we can go a little longer, up to extra 15 minutes. So we should have some time for discussion, hopefully after
Okay.
after your
Okay.
slides.
All right. Thanks. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Charlie Lewis with SkySong Innovations. We're the tech transfer arm for Arizona State University. So we're cousins of Doug and University of Arizona down in Tucson. So we're a couple hours north. But we are a separate company, and that's because in Arizona there's a constitutional prohibition of public universities, 3 in Arizona, being able to hold equity in private companies, for-profit companies. So the way we kind of legally circumvent that is we are a separate company, sit outside the university. But our role, our function in life, mission in life is the same as what you've heard from my colleagues. I'm going to focus a little more on what we do from a community engagement standpoint, because that is a big piece of what we do as one of the largest maybe universities in the country from an enrollment standpoint. I think we have 140,000 learners for 4 campuses, including online as well. And from a metric standpoint, I guess for our tech transfer office, then I'll move over to the kind of the community engagement. In the last 20 years, we've launched 240 startups, new startups. The aggregate of funding equity investment that's gone into those companies is 1.4 billion. We've had 14 exits so far, hopefully some more in our current portfolio. But the services that we provide, very similar to what you've heard from a support standpoint from my colleagues here at their respective universities. We similarly provide mentoring, EIR type services, space within the university for new startups, incubator space. And if you're interested in seeing any of the technologies that are available for licensing and startup, you can certainly go to our website and peruse the portfolio of available technologies. But with that said, I'm going to focus on our startups. Okay, so sorry, I'm having a problem with one of my monitors here. Can you see this? Is it a Chandler Endeavor? Okay. So I'm going to go back to the first screen. So if you look at ASU's engagement with the community, you see that there's the mission, as it states here, is to be inclusive to the greatest extent possible. So not limiting the entrepreneurial programming and services that we provide just to our own faculty startups or to our student startups, but to provide that same level of support to the community. So our approach, as you see, is creating partnerships with entrepreneurs all across our local region. So what do we do in the community? I'm just going to showcase one of them. So Chandler is one of the suburbs outside of Phoenix, and you can sort of look at it as its own ecosystem in what we do in the region. So we assist founders, small business owners, and provide these services that I've been mentioning to you. And you see what we've done from a kind of metric standpoint, a little over 1,000 innovators that we assisted the first year. We do programming, events, workshops, job creation that you see through these startups that we've helped support as they kind of move down the road in their advancement. Here's an example of just some of the folks that we work with in the community. So rapid prototyping to help entrepreneurs that need to spin up whatever it is that they've, created, working on. So we have rapid prototyping services, marketing for our startups over in the corner, mentoring, the guy in the bottom left, pitch competitions that we have kind of all over town. We label this thing that we do called pitch ins, and what it's designed to do is to allow these community entrepreneurs to be able to access people and resources within the community. So as you see, we have presenters that do 6-minute presentations, Q&A, and then the question that we pose is, how can we help? So it's kind of a needs identification of where they're at in their journey and their entrepreneurial journey, and how can we as a university assist them in continuing to advance their companies. Co-working space, you've seen a lot of that already, or heard a lot of that from my colleagues. So likewise, we have those all around town. These are five of them that are listed here, but the idea is to just create that environment where these early stage companies can come and hang their shingle and have access to conference room space, meet with mentors, be able to do gatherings for their teams without having that burden of getting locked into expensive leases and rental space here in town. Training and development resources, so we call it TDR. So accessible to anyone, and again in the community, and it provides in a kind of modular fashion of these different what we've kind of bundled together as being key areas of need that we can customize or allow them to customize based upon where they are. So if their big need is, hey, we got to raise capital, which always seems to be everyone, then that particular module will help in doing their pitch prep, getting their pitch deck put together, their presentation put together. If it's, hey, I need help in manufacturing of whatever it is you're building, we have people who come alongside then and help to guide and make introductions and give counsel for moving from wherever you are, prototype stage, to actually being commercially ready and in the market and manufacturing product. So those are all examples that you can take a look at the URL that's mentioned there. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we provide, but all of this is available online. Our counterpart to our tech transfer office is a group that's embedded within the university called ASU E&I. So that's entrepreneurship and innovation. So if you're interested or considering moving to the Arizona area, Phoenix area, you can certainly go online and look at the services that are provided through ASU E&I. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Charlie. So encourage attendees, please put your questions in the Q&A tool. But in the meantime, I will start with some of my own and see if we can get some extra insights from our illustrious panel. It started with kind of a softball here, I guess. So say we have an entrepreneur, he's interested in exploring what technologies you have available at your university, and considering building a startup. How do you what's your process once they reach out with that kind of general interest? How do you take them forward? Go ahead, Doug.
I don't want any. I'm sure all of us have an answer. I'll just, since everyone was quiet, I'll start. So first of all, I encourage anyone just to reach out to me directly if they have questions, if they want to talk about it. We're very hands-on, and we consider ourselves a service unit. But basically, the two easy places to connect for an entrepreneur: number one, if they don't know what they want to do, they get connected to our commercialization partners group, where they can actually sit in, listen to us talk about technologies, give their advice. If they're interested in a startup, we have a couple of paths. That EIR program I talked about, and as well as the Startup Hub, which actually lists a set of technologies. And then if they really want to dig in themselves, we have all of our available inventions listed on our website. And it's easy to find. It's inventions.arizona.edu. And they can just search to their heart's delight on whatever they'd like to find.
All right. If there aren't any additional comments on that, oh, we got one from Gary. Go ahead.
Yeah, so besides the online portal that we have, we can also sometimes provide, if they give us certain areas of interest for them, we provide them with a slide deck of all of our technologies that fall into that area of, for example, surgical devices. And then we'll send them all of non-confidential descriptions of all of our technologies in that area. So they could reach out to us directly and let us know what they're interested in, and we can compile those for them.
You're
I think
muted,
you're
Brian.
muted.
You're muted, Brian. Yeah.
Thank you. So good point, Gary. And then, taking it to the next step, once they find technology or two they're really interested, then we usually go ahead and try to set up a meeting with the inventors and see, if they can explain a little bit more about the stage of development and explore, whether this would be a good partnership long-term and to transition the technology out. Sometimes that involves doing a non-disclosure agreement to make sure that any ideas going, one way or the other are protected, so that if new IP is coming out for as far as improvements that we're able to file on that. Then usually after that we're talking about potentially either an option to license or a license. So can anybody share your thoughts on the difference between those and how a startup might decide, which one to do?
I could take that one, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead, Alvin.
So we have sort of three agreements for our startups. We have a full-blown license agreement, we have an option agreement, and then what we call the letter agreement. If the startup or the entrepreneur is looking to just sort of evaluate the invention, want to keep it, want to tie it up so someone else doesn't get it, but also doesn't want to spend lots of money to tie up that technology, we would encourage a letter agreement. Letter agreement is a 2-page, real quick agreement. It lasts for about 6 months. And what it says is that the university will not negotiate with anyone else during the 6 months. The entrepreneur, the startup, just has to pay a small fee, and it gives them time and opportunity to decide if they really want to go after an option agreement or a full-blown license agreement.
Hey, Alvin, based on that, I'm interested. How do you differentiate between a letter agreement and an option agreement?
Sure. So a letter agreement is supposed to be for evaluation purposes only. You're not supposed to be making and using the technology. If that's what you're going to do, then you need to move into an option agreement. An option agreement is longer. It lasts for up to maybe 2 years, and it does give you the right to make and use the technology. And then as you know, the full-blown license agreement gives you the right to make, use, and actually sell.
And then, Brian, I just wanted to add, because we've had a lot working on education for startups, and that's making sure you guys pick the right counsel. Because a lot of times outside counsel will tell you they have transactional experience, but they haven't actually worked with universities before, and that can really add to your cost and slow down the whole process. So I highly encourage people, because coming from us, you feel like it's cited, so always just ask, because they will tell you they have experience, but you really need to know if they've worked with universities, so they don't ask for things that are a non-starter for, say, a public institution, or what we can and can't offer at any university. And we see that a lot. And so when your friend tells you that they have experience, maybe ask a few more questions.
So Patricia, great point. And you're starting to bring up those differences between commercial, activities versus academic activities, and there's really a cultural difference there as well. How do your teams help to kind of alleviate those differences in the culture, especially say in terms of the push to publish for academia versus, companies that perhaps want to keep things a little quieter for a while?
Yeah, I mean, we rely a lot on education. We actually try to bring in outside counsel who work with startups and universities so that they can provide that education. So it's not coming from your institution. So it's kind of like a neutral party. So we rely pretty heavily on that. I mean, my team works really hard to tell them, expectations and kind of explain terms. And that's where, we really encourage the option instead of a license, because usually it's just, there's too many items to discuss and they're not anticipating that back and forth can take months, whereas an option can take a lot less time.
Anybody else, ways that you can help smooth the transition and the partnership between the inventors and entrepreneurs? Okay, so what about the other big question that we kind of hinted at, that with these startups, they want to do deals with us, but they don't have any cash. So how do we deal? Are we actually getting these things done, or are they just magical startups that somehow have cash and they work with us?
Yeah, I can answer that one, Brian. So what we do at ASU is we provide a pretty generous deferral program on the patent expenses, because that's the one that really kind of bites these startups early on when they have to reimburse for the sunk costs that we've incurred in protecting the IP that they're now licensing for the startup. So we provide a couple of years of a grace period before they actually have to start reimbursing for those sunk costs. Now, any new costs that happen along the way, they are responsible for, but we do provide that as a way to make it easier, along with not having any upfront license fees that they have to pay. So that's another thing that we can defer in order to make it easier to get the startup launched.
So Charlie, you kind of talked about some nice advantages you have there on the upfront. So how do you balance that out in terms of the total compensation package? You're giving up upfront. So what do you get instead?
Well, we don't really look at it from the standpoint of saying, okay, if we're giving this up, we're going to get more back there. I mean, we just kind of maintain deal terms that are consistent within benchmarking that we get through Osage and Autumn, and so we stay within that range for royalties, license fee, equity, consistent, with other universities, but recognizing, what you just brought up, that it's pretty tough when they're trying to raise money using their own money, and then all of a sudden you're saying, hey, we need you to pay a license fee up front, we need to cover these patent expenses. So we just try to make it a little easier on the front end.
And let's see. Does anybody have a particular way that startups can hire your students or graduates and get connected with them?
There's nothing directly through us. Oh, I'm sorry, Alvin, you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
I say there's nothing directly through us other than if they are, if they're based on our technology, we actually have a program where we'll hire summer interns and put them into the startups and working on specific projects that the startups pitch to us.
Yeah, there's really no wrong way to work with our students. I mean, that's kind of what we're here for, right? We want to encourage the outside community, whether it's startup or not, to work with our students. And whether it's a grad student whose project is the intellectual property that forms the basis of the startup, I mean, that's the person you really want on your team. Otherwise, if it's another graduate student or undergrad, there's really no wrong way of approaching them and ask them to join you.
And actually, that program Doug mentioned, I think that's replicated a number of places. We have that in our region in Maryland, where the state will actually pay for those type of transitions, so that startups can get some of that tech expertise involved. Well, I think we're about coming up on time, so I'd like to thank all of our attendees for sticking with us through the hour and 15 minutes, and of course all the panelists, as well as our host Quan Nguyen from WinTarget, and JJ, our host of the symposium as a whole from Pismo Ventures. So great discussion, and just thank you for highlighting all your incredible resources at your different institutions.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Alvin, Doug. I'm gonna forget Charlie now, but Patricia,
Again.
Brian, and Gary, thank you so much for being part of this. This was great. Like, there's so many resources out there, and the fact that potentially some in the previous panel we had, they said, why don't you go out and go to universities and use their resources? So potentially there are a lot of ways where university resources could be used as well, not only just students. So this is really great. Thank you all very much. Again, you're part of the symposium. Please log in, connect with some of the founders and startups, and also investors that are available here. And we have other webinars and panels throughout the week. Hopefully you can join as well. But thank you so much for being part of this.